Destiny is definitely one of my favorite games. From the variety to the creativity, the game offers a special connection between the gamer and his or her character. From the raids to the Trials of Osiris PvP, the game always offered a unique urge to get things done. No matter what style or technique you prefer in an FPS, the game never failed to cater to everyone's different style of gameplay. From the weapons to the gear, everyone has their own favorites. I've always loved this about the game because it allowed diversity to take effect in any situation. Stat rolls are something that quickly became very important to the competitive players. Having the perfect set of gear with perks that cater to your weapon class is a necessity when playing Destiny. The game has changed dramatically since the original release in 2014. We found that with every new release of content, the developers were able to learn from their mistakes and correct any progression flaw that made the game feel impossible. From acquiring strange coin to obtaining new motes of light, the days of tedious hours of farming are finally over. Destiny has come a long way. I like that the developers always kept all ears open for their fans, correcting any activity that made one feel like there might be a lack of reward on completion. Factions were something that allowed the player to stand for something. From New Monarchy to Dead Orbit to Future War Cult, players were on a mission to represent their faction as quickly as possible. In vanilla, getting this rep up was hell, and I mean hell, but luckily the developers were able to hear us out and increase reputation rewards to cater to those players that loved the game but couldn't avoid their busy schedule. 3 of Coin was a consumable that was later added to the game to help players find those exotics they've been looking for. 3 of Coin allowed the player to have a higher chance of receiving an exotic engram drop after terminating a boss, which is also known as an Ultra. What I loved most about Destiny was their weekly scheduled updates that would make vendors arrive on certain dates for character improvement. It allowed the gamer to feel as if the Destiny world never stopped. Something different or new was always on the way, and it left excitement 24/7. For example, one popular vendor known as Zur would arrive every Friday at 5 AM and would depart every Sunday at 5 AM. Zur allowed new Guardians to quickly obtain exotic weapons that let players skip the process of farming. From the Titan to the Hunter to the Warlock, every player is unique in its own way. Each one offering a diverse set of upgrades per subclass on every character. In vanilla, each character had 2 subclasses, but later added 1 more for a total of 3 subclasses per character. This opened up the game in a tremendous way and introduced the veteran players to something new. PvP has never not been fun. From the challenging bounties that made you itch to complete to the triple kill with your favorite sniper rifle, I'd say it's definitely up there for my favorite role-playing FPS. Meta is something that can get annoying at times and something I find is always changing. From hand cannons to shotguns to the high rate of fire pulse rifles, the game is always changing its archetype weapon stats for a fresh feel to the game to help balance things out. Personally, I feel like it's something they need to spend time on, get it perfect, and never touch again. Allowing players to get comfortable with a certain archetype and pushing their skill to the next level. Destiny learned a lot from its early stages, and a lot of the things I didn't like about the game have either been corrected or are now obsolete. Iron Banner was something that players always looked forward to with its unique style of weapons and gear. This weekly event allowed players to work towards legendary Iron Banner loot. Destiny had many different ways through its 2 years for the player to acquire his or her legendary Iron Banner gear. By year 3, Destiny settled on a vendor setup of 2 weapons and 2 pieces of armor that could be obtained every event. Random drops were rewarded to the player upon the completion of Iron Banner bounties and matches. Iron Banner bounties were the perfect way for the dedicated player to move quickly through the ranks of the Iron Banner. Iron Banner is fun for the most part, but I always felt that by the end of the week I played my fix of PvP for the next little bit, and it would allow me to focus on the PvE aspects of the game. Raids. Raids is what Destiny is about. One player with a job that was just as important to the other 5 players. He or her chose to go on this epic quest. If one wasn't holding their weight, the entire team felt it. Designated positions or roles allowed players to feel somewhat of importance. As everything falls in sequence and for the most part perfect timing, players were able to move forward in these raids one step at a time. Raid loot was some of the top loot in the game. Back in vanilla days, your primary raid weapons were given an elemental damage that allowed the player to utilize his rewards and conquer any PvE battlefield. This was later changed to connect damage on all primaries because the developers believed it didn't bring their game engine to max potential. In replace of the elemental burns, players were now given buffs on certain activities that could either make things easier or tougher. For example, Solar Burn is one buff that has significantly increased the damage of any solar secondary or heavy in the game. Another was Secondary Weapon Damage, which added an increased damage buff to any secondary weapon. Buffs came by the 5, for example, Airborne, Match Game, Epic, Solar Burn, and Secondary Weapon Damage can all be in effect on a single Nightfall or Heroic Strike. Using these buffs to your advantage is critical when playing these events. So if I took a Solar Shotgun, which is a secondary, my damage would be significantly increased by both Solar Burn and Secondary Damage bonus. Buffs were a neat feature that I think every player either loved or hated. For all you vets, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. Bond Brothers, Solar Burn, I know, we've all been through it, and it's a challenge that never seems to get old. Moving on to another PvP feature, Trials of Osiris was a fan favorite. A weekly event that arrived every Friday to Monday, where teams go in with one thing in mind: win. Before entering the Trials of Osiris with your team of 3, each player must acquire a player scorecard that would keep track of any win or loss. Winning 9 consecutive games would grant you and your team a trip to the lighthouse that rewarded legendary exclusive Trials of Osiris loot at top light level. Each scorecard had 3 mercies. The first was Mercy of Osiris, which would forgive your first loss and keep that scorecard clean. The second was the Favor of Osiris that allowed you to start your score with 1 win. Last but not least was Boldness. Winning your first match counts as 2. Each mercy costs 3 passage coin that can be acquired from daily PvPs or losses in the Trials of Osiris playlist. This feature has always been a favorite for us. The competitive factor is there, and I love that about it. I don't like how meta weapons are overused and it quickly became a battle of the meta, if you know what I mean. If it ain't meta, you ain't going flawless. Being a player in-game that's able to come back from a 3v1 is honestly exhilarating, especially when it's a 4v4 on your 9th game. Overall, I think Bungie learned a lot since 2014, catering to Guardians like never before, and making sure progression isn't an issue for all players in the Destiny community. If all the content was released at the same time in 2014, this game could have been groundbreaking, sending the player on an endless journey of discovery and progression. The game offers an amazing experience that cannot be compared in any other FPS, but because of how quickly you reach a standstill after an update, I can't give it any more than an 8.1 out of 10. If you agree or disagree with anything in this video, let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.